Welcome to The Volley, a podcast by Tennis Majors, bringing you in-depth insights into tennis's latest hot topics from the Tennis Majors team.
We are back on The Volley, a podcast by Tennis Majors. I'm your host, Max Whittle. Hope you guys are doing well. I can't wait for today's topic, all about the wonderful, intriguing, incredibly talented Daniil Medvedev. The US Open men's final is upon us, and the Russian is the only player that can stop Novak Djokovic from achieving the calendar Grand Slam. You could say it would take a genius to do so, and that word has already been used to describe the world number 2. So while Daniil Medvedev works on perfecting his game here at Tennis Majors, we are dedicated to chatting about all the latest tennis news via digital media, bringing you video, debate and news from the tennis world. So Mr. Medvedev is set to play in his third Grand Slam final, searching for his maiden major trophy. It is already a very successful career, considering his coach, Gilles Cervara, revealed this week that just 2 or 3 years ago, Medvedev doubted he could even crack the top 30. Since that time, he has started working with psychoanalyst and performance coach Francisca Dauzet, and his fascinating working relationship with Cervara goes from strength to strength. Today, we will look at both of those characters and how they have impacted Medvedev's timeline and potential, and do so with the help of Tennis Majors Editor-in-Chief Cedric Rouquette. Cedric, before we get into the Medvedev topic, you should tell our listeners where you are recording from, because there's it sounds busy where you are.
Hello, Max. Yes, of course. You may hear a little sound around me because I'm in Tarbes, in deep south of France, not that far from Spain. And you might know that in Tarbes is happening for almost 40 years now, the Les Petits As, a very famous under-14 tournament, probably the most prestigious in the world in this category. And if you saw on YouTube pictures of Gasquet and Nadal playing when they were teenagers, well, it was shot in Tarbes here. So yeah, I spent my week here, and that's what I can do in terms of sound for today.
Well, who are we looking out for? Who's the next star that you can see at the moment?
You know, in Tarbes, you used to say that every future star is playing here, which is probably true, more or less. But not every future star win the tournament. You have players that have won in Tarbes and never been that big. And you had players like Stefanos Tsitsipas losing in qualies and now number 3 in the world. So what I can say first is that the level is incredible. I mean, there are players here between 12 and 14, and to see how the shots are clean, to see how clever the tennis IQ of certain of them, to see and the speed of the game. I mean, sometimes the spectators are tired just looking at the players. First of all, the level is incredible. I don't know which kind of tennis it will lead in 10 years, but the level is already incredible. And well, I can make a little name dropping, probably with you probably have heard Ksenia Efremova, the young Russian on whom we made a documentary on Tennis Majors, and we discovered here another player aged 12 who beat Ksenia. She's from Great Britain. She's called Hannah Klugman. She's only 12. She's much taller than Ksenia, and she's in semi-final right now. And I mean, her level of game and I mean her conversation already is very mind-blowing for a 12-year-old girl. So Hannah Klugman definitely is a thrill here, and I must say I'm impressed by the talent of 2 boys. Maxim Herva, Czech player, very talented, and the Italian Federico Cina, tall guy also, very big tennis IQ, and he was already in quarterfinals last year, and he's confirming this year.
Well, it's perfectly apt that you're there, Cedric, because Emma Raducanu, Leila Fernandez have a combined age of 37, and they are going to compete in the women's final at the US Open. So it's good timing for sure to see the future stars of the game. The story that you wrote on Tennis Majors, though, if we get down to business, and I encourage everybody listening to go and read after this podcast, is titled How Daniil Medvedev Harnessed His Mental Power to Become One of the Best Players in the World. Now, the description, monstrous mental potential, that really drew me in. So come on, Cedric, set the scene and tell us the key figures around Daniil that have him just one victory from his first Grand Slam success.
Yes, I'm very thankful to you first for your words on this article, and to Gilles Cervara's staff and for that trust. They gave me a lot, I think, to write this story about how Daniil became a great player. He is a great player, number 2 in the world. Incredible power, incredible speed, incredible tennis IQ as well, and the key around Medvedev is that for sure Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, even Novak Djokovic, even Alexander Zverev, even other players, you could tell they would be big. On Daniil Medvedev you couldn't really, and even the player himself and his coach Gilles couldn't guess he would be a top 3, top 2 players, and now clearly competing from Grand Slams. It's their common objective. And one of the key for this incredible development, and once again incredible for Daniil himself, was the work that Daniil made on his mental. The word mental preparation is not really relevant even to Gilles Cervara's eyes and to Francisca Dauzet's eye. Francisca Dauzet is the French psychologist and psychanalyst, should I say, who is following Daniil. The word mental preparation is not really relevant to their eyes. What they are doing with Daniil is a global work on mental health, should we say. Mental health in the sense of they work to make Daniil happy. If you remember that we have issues there in tennis, in professional tennis, since Osaka's withdrawal in Roland Garros, and then to be a very good professional player. Daniil Medvedev, when he was young, was very nervous on the court. He lost his nerves pretty often. Sometimes he's still losing his nerves, but there was something in his behavior on the court that impeded him to reach the top level, and it was an issue for Gilles Cervara. And they also work on mental process to not to be that scared on the break points, on the match points, to find energy when you're down, etc., etc. So they don't like the word mental preparation, but they work with him on all those global aspects of what you have in your brain. It's the way Gilles Cervara saying it, all happening in your brain, and you can't put words on this on what's happening in your brain if you're not backed by a professional.
Well, Medvedev and Cervara, they have such a fascinating working relationship, and it's going from strength to strength. Clearly, I think you can tell they really get on, and we were lucky enough at UTS4 to see them work together closely. But getting Dauzet on board was not easy for Cervara. Medvedev took a lot of convincing, as you wrote in the piece. So when did Cervara believe that Medvedev needed this input, and how did he propose it?
What's very interesting in Gilles Cervara's and Daniil Medvedev's story is that they learned together in the process first that they should work together on a regular basis. It was not the fact at the very beginning. At the very beginning, Daniil Medvedev came in the Cannes Tennis Center as a teenager, and Gilles Cervara was there as one of the coaches. So sometimes he was on the tour with him, and sometimes it was other coaches. And one and the other felt that, well, they have the good connection, and that Daniil's results were pretty good when he was surrounded by Gilles on the tour. I'm speaking of the times when Daniil was playing futures and challengers. And so at some point Daniil asked Gilles to be his regular coach. Gilles said, okay, we were more or less in the year 2017. Gilles said, okay, but do I have a blank card to manage the performance project? That's his word, really. As I want it. Daniil said okay, And so little by little, Gilles built around Daniil a team, a real team. I mean, Gilles, more than a coach, is a kind of director of performance for Daniil. And he told me that there were 7 of them working around Daniil for Daniil's performance. So it started little by little. First Gilles alone, and then physical preparation, etc., etc. And Gilles knew from long time that the mental part of tennis was crucial. He was himself very curious of that for ages. It was partly related to his personal journey, and at some point he understood that Daniil needed to work that better than he did at this time. At this time, around the year 2018, Daniil had another advisor on mental aspect, and Gilles could only notice that after Medvedev's first victory on the tour in January 2018 in Sydney, Australia, Daniil was out from the qualifications, and it was the moment when he decided he would do everything for tennis. It wasn't that clear in his mind before that. So after this victory in Sydney, Gilles could only see that Daniil's performance were declining, and that would it be in training session or in competition, Daniil couldn't get the best from him. There were a kind of, I won't say sadness because it wasn't Gilles' word, but something that impeached him really to give his own self on the court. He insisted on the fact that Francisca Dauzet was the best person he knew to develop Daniil's mental aspect, and Francisca and Daniil had already met around, I think it was 18 months before. The connection was not that good because Francisca Dauzet has a lot of skills in different aspects of mental work, and it was probably too much for Daniil. But around the grass season in 2018, Daniil was really at the bottom, and so he finally said, no, I think I'm ready to work with Francisca, and that's when everything started. And Medvedev then made a third one in Wimbledon, who was an incredible performance for him at this time because he barely lost all his matches, and then he started to grow to the player we know today.
And Medvedev is described by Dauzet as having an ability to think more deeply, go further within himself than the average person. What does that interrogation look like when the two work together?
I wish I would exactly know, but I don't, because even if Francisca told me a lot on his methodology, on Daniil's player profile, of course she couldn't reveal me the entire Daniil's file, you know. So I wish I could know, because it seems spectacular. If you listen to Francisca or Gilles, they describe him as a man with incredible mental potential. And when I ask them what does that mean, incredible mental potential, Francisca answers, he has an incredible skill to go deep into his own mind and to read his mind. So what does that mean exactly? It means that Francisca, as far as I could understand their process, is asking questions to Daniil on, what they have to work together. And as I said, Francisca has a lot of tools, a lot of skills. She's basically a psychoanalyst, an intergenerational psychoanalyst. She's also graduated in performance management in the French public service for performance, where all the athletes, or most of the athletes competing in the Olympics, are training all year long. And so many others. I mean, just with her side, it's very impressive. So she has a lot of tools, and considering what she's hearing, she's following the path of the thoughts that the player expresses. What you have to understand on this aspect are two things. Francisca is following he's following Daniil. I mean, she doesn't have ambition for him. She listens to what Daniil wants, what Daniil needs to improve, and she's really following his path. She told me something like, I'm literally dancing with him when we talk. And the other thing that you have to understand is that everything is possible. Sometimes she told me that sometimes she's asking him how he would express some feeling in Russian, and she would try to understand what it means in Russian. Sometimes they talk about philosophy. They have a lot of tools. And when she once met Daniil, she knew that his mental potential could lead him to the top. I mean, tennis coaches and observers couldn't say that on his tennis skills, on his physical skill. He was tall, he was pretty slow. That his technique is not very classic, and so you could doubt of his potential. Once she had met him the very first time at the end of 2016, she told to Gilles his mental potential can lead him to the top, and that's what's fascinating about it.
We have another headline there: Dancing with Daniil and Dauzet. I quite like that. And what I really enjoyed about when I worked on Ultimate Tennis Showdown, and Medvedev, as you know, was nicknamed the chess master, what I really appreciated about him then was how he answered every question honestly. He was very open, and I'm not sure whether that pertains really to the format of UTS or whether he was just feeling particularly relaxed that week, but he did answer every question honestly. So I guess what I'd like to know from you is what fascinates you about Medvedev and his personality?
You're right. I think he's a very he doesn't have that much to hide. He's you could think it's not a revelation, the revelation what I'm saying now, but it was really a decision he took himself 4 years ago, that he would give everything to be the best tennis player he can be. It's really a conscious decision he took with Gilles Cervara, and you can feel that he's giving everything to that. And giving everything to that, it means that, well, on the microphone with journalists, with the audience, I mean, he's only himself. Of course, he can't reveal everything of his private life and his professional secrets, but he's living his best life. So he's a pretty easygoing guy as far as I can know, and you know that he's training most of his time at the Moratoglu Tennis Academy, and that's where Tennis Majors has his offices. What's fascinating, it's not really when Daniil is speaking, when he doesn't speak, because you can see him in the restaurant. But what I'm calling the restaurant is just the common place where everybody is eating. You know, all the kids of the academy, of the personnel of the academy, and he's sometimes and regularly very, alone at the table with his earphones. Is just like everybody else, and sometimes you just have to realize that the guy is number 2 in the world. He was in final in Melbourne 10 days before, and he will be a Roland Garros contender 2 months later. He's really like anybody in this context.
It's funny that you described that scene, because I remember when Medvedev arrived at UTS and at the academy, and he did exactly what you just said. He sat down in the cafe outside with his phone, with his headphones, had a sandwich, and he had his rackets next to him, and every kid I saw was just gawping at him, just staring at this world number 2, this great tennis player. He's going on to do so many great things, and he was just one of everyone else. He was just part of the whole scene. He just blended right in. He is such a likable guy, and I think he's misunderstood too, which leads me on to my next question. Why did it take so long for the American crowd to warm to him, and what reception do you expect for the final against Djokovic?
Wow. What's fascinating with Medvedev and the US Open audience is that we all remember that he was booed during the matches, and after some matches in the US Open 2 years ago, and Daniil Medvedev had this funny attitude when he was saying to the audience, please continue because you give me a lot of force. And
the energy you're giving me right now, guys, I think it will be enough for my 5 next matches. I mean, the more you do this, the more I will win for you guys. Thank you.
So you can ask, how can you start by this kind of relationship, this kind of scene, to a very powerful cheering he had after the final of this US Open 2019, Nadal, and now he's very respected by the American audience. And Francisca told me that the team behind Daniil had noticed that, well, he was more or less the big Russian, sometimes on his nerves, not a big star at all, not that respected by the audience or the media or the organizers. I mean, he was maybe number 10 in the world and playing on little courts. And they had anticipated that, well, he was not that beloved on the tennis court, and at some point it could be a problem. And as I understand it, they let him be himself, which is a very special character. And they thought that doing what he did, they thought that maybe the American audience who loves winners, who love players giving everything to be themselves, whatever the context, at some point it would pay. And that's finally what happened. So I think that I don't expect any hostility, but the key point for me before the final is to understand if the American audience will be behind Djokovic or neutral with Djokovic or against Djokovic, because you know that Djokovic's relationship with the audience is a more sensible subject than Medvedev's relation with the public, because Djokovic is achieving something probably unique in the history of the game if he wins, and he doesn't think that the general opinion and general media give enough credit to that. And you can remember that he was booed when he played finals against Federer, and to know how the American audience will behave with Djokovic on Sunday is really a crucial point for me, more than Medvedev.
What's fascinating, though, as you were saying that there, I was starting to think about Medvedev's persona when he goes and plays a tournament and the reception he gets. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, is he a fan favorite anywhere? Where is he most liked? I think he's probably seen as a bit aloof as well at times. So what is Medvedev's status with tennis fans, do you think?
Well, you can see at the Mouratoglou Academy that little kids do know who he is, and they look after him as who he is. I mean, a slam contender and number 2 in the world. What I know is that I'm here in Tarbes, as you know, and one of the sponsors of the tournament is Lacoste and Technifibre, both of them being sponsors of Daniil Medvedev. They also sponsor Les Petits As. So I talked this week with marketing responsibles of Technifibre, and they told me that now, from recent months, it's very fresh, little kids are saying, among my favorite player, you have Daniil Medvedev. They have a program in Technifibre called Petit Croco, if I remember well, when they're going to meet very young players, 12, 13, 11, to help them by bringing them equipment, Technifibre rackets. And sometimes, of course, the young players tell, thank you, but I love Rafael Nadal, so I play in Babolat. I love Roger Federer, so I play with Wilson. I love Novak Djokovic, so I play with Head. And Technifibre, you want to offer me rackets, that's fine from you, but thank you, I don't want. The more time flies, the less they notice the kind of answer, and they even have young players telling them, wow, incredible, Technifibre, Medvedev's brand, he's my favorite player. So it's very fresh, but it starts to emerge. But regarding to his public image, I think there's something interesting is that, Daniil Medvedev, even if he's much more quiet today than he was before, I mean, he had in the past behaviors what I'm calling behaviors of a rock star, when he was booed at the US Open, when he provoked by Stefanos Tsitsipas in Miami. It was 5 years ago, but I mean the pictures are still on YouTube. In Melbourne this year, he had a nervous breakdown against his coach Gilles Cervara, telling him in French, tu as pété les plombs. It means it literally means you became crazy, let me play, and everybody saw Gilles leaving the court. So he's this kind of rock star to my mind. But he's with I was about to say luxury brand. It may be a big word, but he's with Lacoste. I know from his agents that they want to work his image on this kind of image, very smart, very clean, most luxury. And I think there is an interesting clash here between some aspects of his personality and some aspects of his public image. But as far as we are talking, everything is fine for him and his image, but I'm very curious on the way it would develop if he wins Slam, if global brands really wants to meet him. It would be very interesting to follow.
Well, I think the beauty of Medvedev and his marketability is the fact that he is himself. He doesn't try and be anything other than himself, which is what I like about him and what I appreciate about him for sure. Cedric, before I get your US Open prediction for the men's final, my last question on this topic: what is more unique about Daniil Medvedev? His style of play or his personality?
We talked a lot about his personality during this podcast because fortunately his staff gave us a lot of keys recently on tennis majors, and we're happy with that. But definitely my answer to your question is his tennis. I mean, his tennis is and that's why not so many people believed in Medvedev, and why he didn't believe in himself that much at the very beginning. On tennis majors, you have a story when Gilles says clearly that Daniil didn't think even 3 years ago that he could be in the top 30. Okay, it's because his tennis is so special, and his way to play tennis is so personal that I mean it doesn't fit with what you could consider what is a clean technique, what is a clean tactical plan, what is a regular body to play tennis. And the most remarkable is his technique. If you look at his forehand technique and backhand technique, it's not the way you learn to play backhand and forehand in any academy in the world, but it's his way to do it. He finds angles, speed, and a way to counterpunch the opponent attacks that are very unique from him. You deliberately can ask yourself how you can be so regular, so consistent on the baseline with his forehand technique. Sometimes we use, photos from photos agencies, and you have photos of Daniil Medvedev, totally incredible. He looks like a circus man, and himself tweeted pictures of himself. You just can't understand how the left arm can have this direction and the right arm this direction, and the foot and the right foot this direction and the left foot this other direction. You can't understand why, but the reality is that on the tennis court, it's a wonderful shot. And one of the best aspect, I think, of the relationship between Gilles and Daniil is that Gilles understood that to get the best from Daniil, it was totally unuseful to tell him, well, you should put your left foot in this position and move your right arm this way. I mean, he's unable to hear this kind of advice. I mean, it doesn't work with him. Gilles understood that, and he understood that he had other ways to get the way from him. But definitely his tennis, his motion, and what it allows him to do on the tennis court, I think is incredible. And we are all involved in these big three stories, in his 20 slam stories, 21st Canada Grand Slam by Djokovic. So I mean, we didn't discuss this story that much for the moment. We will realize how Daniil's skills, game, patterns are literally incredible, really incredible. On tennis majors, you have also, this video format called The Eye of the Coach, where Patrick Mouratoglou is reading professional tennis for us. And the latest issue we made is fascinating and is about the return of serve. Patrick demonstrates that the return of serves have totally changed the way tennis is played today and the way we conceive the importance of the serve. You probably heard, Max, from a lot of pundits that serve was key in male tennis today, that if you were able to make 30 aces per match, it would change everything. But Daniil Medvedev, being so far from the baseline when he receives serve, reshaped the way big servers could be counterpunched today.
When Medvedev played back-to-back Isner and Opelka and beat both of them in 2 straight sets with a lot of breaks, that was a very clear sign. And the message is, I stand so far back that you're not able to ace me much, and I'm gonna give you a deep ball, after your first serve all the time. When Medvedev does that, he takes the number one asset of the opponent and he said, listen, this is rubbish now. Put it in the rubbish. And now we start playing from the baseline. And when we start playing from the baseline, I'm 10 times better than you. So you're in trouble.
You couldn't envisage another than Medvedev to return that far from the baseline. And it's totally related to his very special player profile. Tall, he's very tall, but quick. He's very quick and able to find angles and racket swings only from him. And the reality is that other players saw that, and it is completely changing the game right now. And I'm encouraging you to watch this video from Patrick. It's fascinating.
Absolutely, and I think we should encourage people to watch more Daniil Medvedev tennis because he is so unique and fascinating to watch. He is completely himself on court, and it shows with his success that you can achieve a lot in the game and not be a conventional player. You can do it in your own style. So finally, Cedric, we have Medvedev in his 3rd Grand Slam final, going for his first victory at a major tournament, against Novak Djokovic, going for his 21st Grand Slam, and of course the calendar Grand Slam as well. Who wins on Sunday?
I don't know, man. I'm not very good at gambling, and I must admit that personally, I thought in Melbourne, in the Australian Open in February, this year, that it was Medvedev times. And before the Djokovic-Medvedev final in Melbourne, I told everyone, I think it's Medvedev times. And Djokovic has a little injury. I think Medvedev will make it. And Djokovic won very easily, and we could notice at this moment that he was the best, literally. I still think that Daniil is ready in all aspects. Even to beat Djokovic in Grand Slam, but I can't see Djokovic avoiding to win in this situation. I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine that Djokovic can lose regularly this match. I mean, maybe he can be hurt, maybe he can be disqualified, but I can't imagine he made all this work to lose on a regular match. So I really don't know, man. The only thing I can tell you is that I think it will be a big 5-setter. I would be very astonished if one or the other would win it in 4 or 3 sets. I think it can lead us to an incredible show, probably a very young match, a kind of synthesis between the 2019 final between Nadal and Medvedev, who was incredible, and I don't know, the greatest matches by Djokovic in slams this year, and we can think about the semi-final and the final in Roland Garros, for instance. I think it would be a mix of that. But I'm sorry, I don't know who will win.
Of course you don't know, and it's a silly question to ask, really. But I think you said Djokovic there. I think you did in 5 sets. But also, I know that from 2019, Medvedev won't give up if he's 2 sets down. He's going to eat probably 12 bananas during the course of the match. So we will see. Cedric, it sounds like you have plenty to be getting on with over there. So thank you for your time and enjoy the matches this weekend.
Thank you, Max. Enjoy your weekend and your US Open as well.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have Cedric Rouquette on the volley. You can read those great Medvedev features that he wrote over at tennismajors.com. And just so I don't feel left out, stick with us here on the podcast too. You can listen on Spotify and all main audio platforms. Have a great day, everyone.